Have you ever dreamed of a place so beautiful, so magical, that it feels like it was plucked straight from a fairy tale? A cascading paradise of lush greenery, exotic flowers, and shimmering waterfalls, all suspended in midair, defying gravity in the heart of a bustling ancient city. This isn't a fantasy. This is the legend of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, one of the most enigmatic of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. For centuries, its story has captivated poets, historians, and dreamers alike. But here asks the ultimate question that has puzzled archaeologists for generations. Did this breathtaking wonder ever truly exist? Join me as we journey back in time, sifting through ancient texts and modern theories to unravel the mystery, the majesty, and the myth of the Hanging Gardens. The story begins around 600 BC, with the mighty Neo-Babylonian Empire and its most famous ruler, King Nebuchadnezzar II. As the legend goes, the king's wife, Amadis, hailed from the green, mountainous lands of Media. Homesick for the lush hills and valleys of her childhood, she found the flat, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia to be a desolate landscape. To soothe his beloved queen's heart and bring a piece of her homeland to Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar commanded the construction of a wonder unlike any the world had ever seen. He envisioned an artificial mountain of terraces, a ziggurat of botanical splendor rising high above the city walls. This wasn't just a garden. It was a grand romantic gesture, a testament to a king's love for his queen, built to be seen for miles around. Imagine walking through the bustling gates of Babylon, the largest city of its time. You look up, and there it is, a structure climbing towards the heavens, story upon story of verdant terraces. Ancient writers like the Greek historian Diodorus Siculus painted a vivid picture. He described stone tiers, stacked like a theater, each filled with earth deep enough to support the roots of large trees. Fountains and streams would have crisscrossed the structure, with water ingeniously lifted from the nearby Euphrates River. Exotic plants, fragrant flowers, and fruit-bearing trees from across the empire would have adorned every level. Picture the scent of jasmine and rose hanging in the air, the sound of trickling water providing a cool respite from the desert heat, and the sight of lush green leaves cascading down the stone walls. It would have been a cool, shaded sanctuary, an oasis of life and beauty suspended above the city. The engineering required to create such a marvel would have been nothing short of genius. How did they get water to the top of a multi-story structure in an age without modern pumps? Ancient texts suggest a sophisticated system, possibly using a chain pump or a similar device. This would have involved a continuous loop of buckets attached to a chain, turned by laborers or animals, lifting water from the river level by level. Waterproofing would have also been a massive challenge, to prevent water from seeping through the tiers and damaging the structure. The builders allegedly used layers of reeds, bitumina, natural tar, and sheets of lead. This level of hydraulic engineering and architectural foresight was unprecedented for its time, making the gardens not just a botanical masterpiece, but a triumph of human ingenuity. So, with such detailed descriptions from multiple ancient sources, the gardens must have existed, right? Well, this is where the story takes a fascinating and frustrating turn. For all the tales told by Greek and Roman writers, there's one glaring omission: the Babylonians themselves. We have thousands of cuneiform tablets from Nebuchadnezzar's reign, detailing his extensive building projects, temples, city walls, palaces, but not a single one mentions the construction of a massive, terraced garden. It's a deafening silence from the very people who supposedly built it. Furthermore, despite extensive archaeological excavations at the site of ancient Babylon in modern-day Iraq, no definitive ruins of the gardens have ever been found. Archaeologists have unearthed the foundations of Nebuchadnezzar's palace and the famous Ishtar Gate, but no trace of a colossal structure fitting the descriptions. This lack of evidence has led to several compelling theories. The first, and most straightforward, is that the Hanging Gardens are simply a myth. Perhaps they were an exaggerated tale, a romanticized story that grew more elaborate with each retelling by Greek travelers and historians who may never have even visited Babylon. The Greeks were fascinated by the exotic East, and a story of a mountain-like garden in the desert would have been an irresistible piece of lore. The wonder might have been a poetic creation, a a symbol of the luxury and power of a distant, mysterious empire, rather than a physical reality. It's a plausible explanation, but it doesn't quite satisfy the detail and consistency found in the ancient accounts. But what if the story is true, and we've just been looking in the wrong place? This is the basis for a groundbreaking theory proposed by Dr. Stephanie Dali of Oxford University. She argues that the Hanging Gardens weren't in Babylon at all, but in the rival city of Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. Her culprit, not Nebuchadnezzar, but the Assyrian king, Sennacherib, who ruled about a century earlier. Why? In ancient times, Nineveh was sometimes referred to as New Babylon, after Assyria conquered Babylonia. It's possible that later Greek historians confused the two cities. The evidence for this is compelling. Sennacherib's own records boast of building a magnificent palace and an elaborate palace without rival. He explicitly describes creating a wonder for all peoples, a terraced garden that mimicked the mountains of his homeland. Even more convincingly, reliefs found at Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh depict exactly what the ancient writers described: a lush garden on a terrace, with trees and an aqueduct system. Sennacherib was also a master of hydraulic engineering, and we have archaeological proof of the massive aqueducts and canals he built to bring water to Nineveh from mountains 50 miles away. His own inscriptions describe using a new casting process for a water-raising screw, an invention often attributed to Archimedes centuries later, to lift water to his garden. This evidence lines up so perfectly with the descriptions of the Hanging Gardens that it's hard to ignore. Could the most famous wonder of Babylon have been Assyrian all along? So, where does that leave us? On one hand, we have the powerful legend tied to Nebuchadnezzar and his romantic gesture in Babylonia's story that has endured for millennia. On the other, we have compelling textual and archaeological evidence pointing to King Sennacherib and his engineering marvel in Nineveh. Or perhaps the truth is a blend of both a real, magnificent garden in Nineveh that, through the mists of time and the confusion of geography, became forever associated with the more famous city of Babylon. The mystery itself is part of what makes the Hanging Gardens so enchanting. It exists in a space between history and legend, a place that we can vividly imagine but can't definitively touch, whether a Babylonian reality, an Assyrian masterpiece, or a beautiful Greek myth. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon represent something more than just a structure. They embody humanity's desire to create beauty in the harshest of environments, to innovate, to build paradise on earth, and to express love on a monumental scale. The legend continues to inspire us, reminding us of the incredible heights of imagination and engineering achieved by our ancient ancestors. The search for the gardens continues, and who knows, perhaps one day, a new discovery will finally solve the riddle and turn this enduring myth into a confirmed historical fact. Until then, the gardens will continue to hang, suspended forever in our collective imagination. For centuries, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world has captivated our imagination more than any other. The legendary Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a lush, terraced paradise, a green mountain rising from the arid Mesopotamian plains, built by a king for his homesick queen. It's a story of romance, power, and incredible ingenuity. But what if I told you that this beautiful story might not be the whole truth? What if the gardens weren't in Babylon at all? For thousands of years, we've accepted the tale of King Nebuchadnezzar II, who supposedly constructed this botanical marvel in the 6th century BC for his Median wife, who missed the green hills of her homeland. It's a powerful image, a testament to love and engineering prowess. We've searched for decades, digging through the sands of modern-day Iraq, poring over ancient texts, trying to find concrete proof of their existence in Babylon. Yet, after all this time, archaeologists have found nothing. Not a single definitive ruin. Not one Babylonian text from Nebuchadnezzar's reign that mentions a grand garden. It's a baffling silence from a king known for documenting his every achievement. So, where does that leave us? Are the gardens just a myth? A beautiful fable passed down through generations? Well, that's where things get really interesting. In recent years, a bold new theory has emerged that turns everything we thought we knew on its head. Dr. Stephanie Dali, a renowned Assyriologist from Oxford University, proposed a radical idea. The Hanging Gardens were real, but everyone has been looking in the wrong place. She argues that the gardens weren't in Babylon, but in the rival city of Nineveh, hundreds of kilometers to the north. And they weren't built by Nebuchadnezzar, but by the ruthless Assyrian king, Sennacherib, a century earlier. Sennacherib was an engineering genius. His inscriptions, unlike Babylon's, are filled with detailed accounts of his monumental building projects. He describes creating a palace that has no rival and a wonder for all peoples. He boasts of raising water to the heights of a mountain using a revolutionary new invention, the water screw, to irrigate his magnificent gardens. He even created a vast network of canals and aqueducts, remnants of which can still be seen today, to bring water from the distant mountains. The descriptions are astonishingly detailed, matching what later Greek and Roman writers described as the Hanging Gardens. So, how did this massive mix-up happen? The theory suggests that after Assyria conquered Babylon, the Assyrian capital, Nineveh, was sometimes referred to as the New Babylon. Over time, as Nineveh was destroyed and its history faded, the legend of its magnificent gardens became attached to the more famous and enduring city of Babylon. It's a simple case of historical mistaken identity that has lasted for over 2 millennia. This idea forces us to re-examine the evidence, to look at familiar texts with new eyes, and to piece together a puzzle that has stumped historians for centuries. Join us as we journey back in time to the heart of Mesopotamia, using stunning 3D reconstructions based on archaeological evidence and ancient texts. We will bring both Babylon and Nineveh to life. We'll visualize the sheer scale and complexity of these ancient metropolises. Imagine walking through the Ishtar Gate in Babylon. Its brilliant blue-glazed bricks shimmering in the sun. Then journey with us to Nineveh and witness the intricate aqueduct systems that Sennacherib built, a marvel of ancient engineering that rivaled even the Romans. We'll show you what these gardens might have actually looked like, not as a flimsy romantic dream, but as a masterpiece of hydraulic engineering and horticultural ambition. In this documentary, we will speak with the world's leading archaeologists, historians, and engineers who are on the front lines of this debate. We'll travel to the archaeological sites in Iraq, walking the grounds where these ancient cities once stood, searching for clues buried beneath the dust. You'll hear compelling arguments from both sides. Those who still hold on to the traditional Babylonian story, and those who champion the revolutionary Nineveh theory. We'll analyze cuneiform tablets, compare ancient artistic reliefs, and explore the logistics. How do you lift millions of gallons of water into the air every single day using only ancient technology? This isn't just a story about a garden. It's a story about human ambition, the clash of empires, and the power of a legend to endure through time. It's a historical detective story that challenges our understanding of the ancient world. Were the Hanging Gardens a Babylonian love story or an Assyrian technological triumph? The answer might change history as we know it. We'll sift through the myths, examine the evidence, and attempt to solve one of the greatest mysteries of all time. The truth about the Hanging Gardens is more complex, more controversial, and far more fascinating than you ever imagined. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey. If you find ancient mysteries as fascinating as we do, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more deep dives into history's greatest puzzles. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next adventure. Have you ever heard of a garden so magnificent, so breathtaking, that it was counted among the 7 wonders of the ancient world? A lush, green paradise rising tier upon tier in the middle of a sun-scorched desert. This is the legend of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, a story that has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and dreamers for more than 2,000 years. But here's the mystery. Despite its fame, not a single spade of dirt, not one definitive stone has ever been found to prove it was real. So, was it a true architectural marvel? Or just a beautiful story whispered through the ages? In this documentary, we're going on an epic journey back to ancient Mesopotamia to unravel this very enigma. We'll explore the world of powerful kings and forgotten cities, and dive deep into the controversies that still swirl around this legendary wonder. Did King Nebuchadnezzar II really build this green mountain in Babylon for his homesick queen? A grand gesture of love written in leaves and flowers? Or could the entire story be misplaced, with the real gardens located hundreds of miles away in the rival city of Nineveh, as some groundbreaking new theories suggest. Join us as we sift through ancient texts from Greek historians who wrote about the gardens centuries after they supposedly vanished, to Babylonian records that are mysteriously silent. We'll speak with the world's leading experts who will guide us through the historical clues and archaeological dead ends. Using stunning 3D reconstructions, we will bring the possible designs of the gardens to life, exploring the incredible engineering that would have been required to pump water to the top of such a structure in the heart of modern-day Iraq. How did they defy gravity and the desert climate to sustain a vibrant oasis? We'll travel to the very sites where these ancient cities once stood, examining the ruins of Babylon and Nineveh, and using modern technology like satellite imaging to search for forgotten traces. Through vivid animated dramatizations, you'll be transported into the courts of Mesopotamian kings, witnessing the politics, power, and propaganda that might have fueled the creation of such a legend. Was it a real place, a political boast, or a poetic dream of a paradise on Earth? This isn't just a quest to find a lost garden. It's a detective story that challenges our understanding of history itself. It's about how stories are told, how legends are born, and how the line between myth and reality can become blurred over time. What does the enduring power of this tale tell us about our own human desire for beauty, wonder, and a connection to a magnificent past? We will investigate the cultural impact of the Hanging Gardens, from ancient art to modern pop culture, and understand why this particular wonder continues to capture our collective imagination more than any other. We'll look at the story of Queen Amytis, the Median princess for whom the gardens were supposedly built, and explore the romantic narrative that has become inseparable from the legend. Is it a story of love, or a story of a king's immense power and ambition? As we peel back the layers of myth and history, we confront the ultimate question. Does it matter if the Hanging Gardens were real? Or is there true power in the inspiration and awe they've provided for centuries? This journey will take you from dusty archaeological digs to the top of a verdant, imagined paradise, all in the search for the truth behind a wonder that may or may not have ever existed. Get ready to explore one of history's greatest mysteries. We'll weigh the evidence, hear from the experts, and by the end, you can decide for yourself what to believe. The story of the Hanging Gardens is more than just a tale of a structure. It's a story about human ingenuity, the power of a good story, and our eternal search for paradise. Our story begins in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, nestled between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in modern-day Iraq. Here rose the mighty city of Babylon, a sprawling metropolis of sun-baked brick, towering ziggurats, and immense power. For centuries, it was the heart of an empire, a hub of culture, science, and trade. Its very name echoed with grandeur. At the city's zenith, during the 6th century BC, Babylon was ruled by the formidable King Nebuchadnezzar II. He was a conqueror, a visionary, and an unparalleled builder. Under his reign, Babylon became a spectacle of architectural genius. He raised the city's walls to be impenetrable, constructed the magnificent Ishtar Gate, and rebuilt the Great Ziggurat, which some believe inspired the tale of the Tower of Babel. Nebuchadnezzar's ambition was to make Babylon the center of the world, a city that would awe both gods and men for eternity. And it is to him that legend attributes the creation of the Hanging Gardens. The story, as passed down by classical writers like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, is a tale of love. Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Queen Amytis, was from the green, mountainous land of Media. Homesick for the lush landscapes of her youth amidst the flat, arid plains of Mesopotamia, she longed for the sight of rolling hills and verdant forests. To soothe her melancholy, the king commanded the impossible. He would build her a man-made mountain of gardens, a verdant paradise rising in tiers towards the sky. This green mountain would be a testament to his love and his power, a wonder to behold. This romantic tale cemented the Hanging Gardens in our collective imagination as a symbol of devotion and engineering marvel. So, what might this wonder have actually looked like? Imagine a structure built like a theater, with ascending tiers of terraces. Each level would be a balcony filled with deep soil, capable of sustaining not just flowers and shrubs, but large, mature trees, picture date palms, cedars, and cypresses, casting shade, with fragrant blossoms and trailing vines spilling over the edges, creating the illusion of a green mountain cascading down. The air would be filled with the scent of jasmine and the sound of buzzing bees. But the real genius was in the irrigation. How do you water a mountain in the middle of a desert? Ancient engineers were masters of water management. It's theorized they used a complex system, perhaps employing an early version of the Archimedean screw, a giant corkscrew-like divisor, a chain of buckets pulled by workers or animals to lift water from the nearby Euphrates River. This water would then flow through channels, irrigating each terrace, before cascading down to the next, creating waterfalls and streams that brought the entire structure to life. It was a self-contained, living ecosystem, a testament to Mesopotamian innovation. Now, here's where the story takes a dramatic turn. For all the vivid descriptions from ancient Greek and Roman writers, there's a huge problem. Not a single Babylonian text, not one cuneiform tablet from Nebuchadnezzar's time ever mentions the Hanging Gardens. Furthermore, archaeologists have scoured the ruins of Babylon for decades and found no definitive evidence of their location. The foundations of a massive terrace structure, a legendary irrigation system. Nothing. This glaring absence has led many historians to question whether the gardens ever existed in Babylon at all. This brings us to a compelling and controversial theory, proposed by Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford University. After years of deciphering ancient texts, she suggested that the world has been looking in the wrong place. Her theory points not to Babylon, but 300 miles north to the city of Nineveh, the capital of the rival Assyrian Empire. The ruler of Nineveh, King Sennacherib, lived a century before Nebuchadnezzar and was also a prolific builder and a keen gardener. Unlike in Babylon, we have extensive records from Sennacherib's reign describing his magnificent palace and a wonder for all peoples. He boasted of creating a garden that replicated the mountains of his homeland, using new technologies to raise water to great heights. Incredibly, archaeological discoveries near modern-day Mosul, the site of ancient Nineveh, seem to support this. Carvings from Sennacherib's palace depict a lush, terraced garden next to the palace. What's more, evidence has been found of a massive aqueduct system, an engineering feat that would have been necessary to bring water to such a garden. Dr. Daly argues that when Babylon later conquered Nineveh, the legend of this magnificent garden was absorbed into Babylonian lore and eventually, through a geographical mix-up by later historians, misattributed to Nebuchadnezzar. Could the Hanging Gardens of Babylon actually be the Hanging Gardens of Nineveh? Regardless of their location, the engineering required would have been staggering. Let's think about what it took. Lifting tons of water daily against gravity was the main challenge. The Archimedean screw, EFIT, Wasu said, would have been a revolutionary piece of technology. The structure itself needed to be incredibly strong to support the weight of soil, water, and giant trees. The Mesopotamians were masters of brickmaking, and they developed waterproof bitumina, natural tar to seal the terraces and prevent water from eroding the structure. The manpower required would have been immense, a coordinated effort of thousands of laborers, engineers, and botanists. It was a project that screamed power, wealth, and a mastery over nature itself. This mastery over nature was deeply symbolic in Mesopotamia. In a harsh, arid climate, a garden was the ultimate status symbol. It represented control over the environment, a paradise on earth. Kings built vast gardens and hunting parks, not just for pleasure, but to demonstrate their divine right to rule. They were seen as stewards of the land, capable of creating order and abundance out of chaos and barrenness. Water, the source of all life, was a sacred element, and to control it on such a scale was to possess the power of the gods. A royal garden was a microcosm of the entire kingdom, well-ordered, fertile, and blessed by divine favor. The search for concrete proof continues. Modern archaeologists face immense challenges working in Iraq, a region marked by conflict and instability. However, new technologies are opening up possibilities. Satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar can help researchers survey large areas without extensive digging, potentially revealing the faint outlines of ancient structures buried beneath the sand. Each new discovery, whether it's a fragment of an aqueduct or a palace inscription, brings us one step closer to solving this ancient puzzle, but the sands of time have hidden their secrets well. So, how do we separate fact from fiction? The Hanging Gardens may be a case of a legend evolving over time. The story could be a composite blend of travelers' tales, the memory of Sennacherib's, real gardens in Nineveh, and the legendary reputation of Nebuchadnezzar's Babylon. Ancient writers who had never seen the gardens themselves may have embellished the stories they heard, each account growing grander than the last. The romantic tale of Queen Amethyst, for instance, appears in none of the earliest sources. It was likely added later to give the story a more personal, human touch. What we are left with is a legend that is perhaps more powerful than the truth. Even as a mystery, the legacy of the Hanging Gardens is immense. The image of a terrace, green sanctuary has inspired architects and artists for centuries. We see its influence in modern green buildings with vertical gardens and rooftop parks. The legend has been a fixture in popular culture, appearing in video games, novels, and films, always representing a lost, idyllic world or an impossible dream. It continues to capture our imagination because it combines two of humanity's greatest fascinations: spectacular engineering and the beauty of nature. In conclusion, the mystery of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is more than just an archaeological question. It's a story about human ambition, the power of myth, and our enduring desire to create paradise on earth. Whether it was a real place in Babylon, a misremembered garden from Nineveh, or a beautiful fabrication of the ancient imagination, its story tells us something profound. It shows us that even 2.5 millennia ago, people dreamed of conquering nature, of building the impossible, and of leaving behind a legacy that would be wondered at forever. And in that sense, the Hanging Gardens are very, very real. Of all the great monuments of the ancient world, only one survives. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands tall, defiant against time. But one of its legendary companions, it may never have stood at all, or did it? This is a story of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the most mysterious of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A marvel described with awe, yet whose existence remains unproven, and whose beauty continues to enchant scholars, dreamers, and explorers alike. In T-Series, we'll dive into the legend, the history, the engineering, and the ongoing mystery of a green paradise said to rise from the heart of the desert. The ancient Greeks were captivated by human achievement. Around the 2nd century BCE, writers began compiling lists of the greatest feats ever created, structures so impressive they were considered wonders. They called them the 7 wonders of the world, and included in this list was a place so magical, so seemingly impossible, that it seemed more myth than reality. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. So what exactly were these gardens supposed to look like? Close your eyes and imagine. We're not talking about a simple park. Ancient texts paint a picture of a breathtaking, multi-tiered structure, like a man-made mountain of lush greenery. Terraces stacked one on top of the other, each overflowing with exotic trees, fragrant flowers, and trailing vines. It was said to be an oasis of vibrant life in the middle of a sun-baked city. Waterfalls cascaded down the sides, a constant, refreshing sound in the dry Mesopotamian air. The sight must have been incredible, a green spectacle visible 4 miles around, a symbol of power and beauty that defied the natural landscape. This wasn't just a garden. It was an architectural miracle, an engineering masterpiece designed to bring the cool, green hills of a distant land to the flat, dusty plains of Babylon. But who was the visionary behind such an impossible dream? The most romantic and popular story credits King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled Babylon in the 6th century BCE. The legend goes that his wife, Queen Amethyst, came from the mountainous and green land of Media. She missed the hills and forests of her homeland and grew homesick in the flat, arid landscape of Mesopotamia. To comfort her and to prove his love, Nebuchadnezzar commanded the construction of this extraordinary garden. It was a gift, a colossal monument to his affection, designed to recreate the landscape of her home. Can you imagine a more lavish expression of love? Building a mountain just for the person you adore. It's a tale that has captivated hearts for centuries, blending power, romance, and an ambition that reached for the heavens. The engineering required to build and sustain such a structure would have been nothing short of genius. Remember, we're in the middle of a desert. Keeping a multi-story garden alive requires a constant, massive supply of water. So how did they do it? The Greek historian Strabo described a sophisticated irrigation system. He wrote about a screw-like device, possibly an early version of the Archimedes screw, that was used to lift water from the nearby Euphrates River. Slaves would have worked in shifts, continuously turning these screws to pump water up to the highest terrace. From there, it would flow down through a series of channels, watering each level of the garden. The structure itself was said to be made of baked bricks and bitumen, a waterproof tar, to prevent water damage to the levels below. It was a complex, labor-intensive system, a testament to the ingenuity of Babylonian engineers. They didn't just build a structure, they created a self-sustaining ecosystem. The accounts from ancient writers are filled with wonder. The historian Diodorus Siculus wrote that the gardens had the appearance of a theater, with tiers rising one above the other. Philo of Byzantium marveled at the cultivated plants suspended in the air, noting that the roots of the trees were embedded in an upper terrace rather than in the earth. These descriptions fueled the legend, creating an image of a paradise suspended between heaven and earth. The plants themselves were said to be a collection from across the empire: cypresses, fruit trees, and rare flowers, all thriving hundreds of feet in the air. It was a botanical collection as much as it was an architectural wonder, a living library of the natural world, showcasing the vast reach and wealth of the Babylonian Empire. It wasn't just beautiful, it was a statement. Now for the big question, the mystery that has puzzled historians for centuries. If the Hanging Gardens were so magnificent, why can't we find them? Archaeologists have excavated the ancient city of Babylon extensively. They've found the foundations of palaces, temples, and the famous city walls. But of the Hanging Gardens, not a single definitive trace. There are no Babylonian records that mention them. Nebuchadnezzar himself, who loved to boast about his building projects on clay tablets, never once wrote about constructing a massive garden. This complete lack of physical evidence and local records is the core of the mystery. It is like finding a detailed travel guide to a city that seems to have never existed on any map. It forces us to ask, were the ancient Greek and Roman writers who described the gardens just repeating a fantastic rumor? Was it all just a beautiful mirage? This lack of evidence has led to some fascinating alternative theories. One of the most compelling comes from Dr. Stefli Dali of Oxford University. After decades of research, she proposed that the gardens did exist, but they weren't in Babylon at all. She argues that the Hanging Gardens were actually located in the city of Nineveh, the capital of the rival Assyrian Empire, about 300 miles to the north. Her theory suggests that they were built by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, not Nebuchadnezzar. Why? The confusion? Nineveh was sometimes referred to as New Babylon, after Assyria conquered Babylon. Dr. Dali points to detailed inscriptions from Sennacherib's palace that describe a magnificent garden and a complex water-raising technology, matching the descriptions of the Hanging Gardens almost perfectly. Could it be that the Greek historians, writing centuries later, simply mixed up the location and the king? It's a tantalizing possibility that reframes the entire mystery. So, we're left with a puzzle. Was it a romantic gift from a Babylonian king, an engineering marvel in Nineveh, mistakenly credited to a rival, or simply a beautiful fable, a product of the human imagination that has been passed down through generations? The Hanging Gardens of Babylon represent more than just a potential historical site. They represent the human fascination with creating paradise on earth, our desire to build something lasting and beautiful in a world that is often harsh. The legend endures not because we have proof, but because we want to believe in a place where human ingenuity and love could create something so breathtakingly beautiful. The mystery itself is part of the magic. Whether they were real or not, the Hanging Gardens have left an indelible mark on our culture. They've inspired countless artists, architects, and dreamers. The very idea of a vertical garden, a green skyscraper, is a concept we see coming to life in modern cities today, as we seek to bring more nature into our urban environments. The legend of the Hanging Gardens is a seed that was planted in the ancient world and continues to blossom in our modern imagination. It's a story about ambition, beauty, and the enduring power of a good mystery. It reminds us that some wonders do not need to be made of stone to stand the test of time. They can be built from stories and live forever in our minds. The camera sweeps over bustling markets, along the massive city walls, and up the side of a towering ziggurat. Have you ever heard a story so beautiful it couldn't possibly be true? A story of love, power, and a wonder of the ancient world that defies imagination. Today, we're diving into one of history's most captivating mysteries. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Was it a real place, or just a beautiful legend? Let's find out together. To understand the gardens, we must first journey back in time to the heart of Mesopotamia. Imagine a city that was the New York or Tokyo of its day. This was Babylon. Located near modern-day Hilla in Iraq, Babylon reached its absolute zenith in the 6th century BCE, under the legendary King Nebuchadnezzar II. This wasn't just a city. It was a declaration of power, a metropolis of unimaginable wealth and architectural ambition. Picture this: towering walls, so wide that chariots could race along their tops. The legendary Ishtar Gate, covered in brilliant blue-glazed bricks and adorned with depictions of dragons and lions, guarding the entrance to a city of wonders. Temples, known as ziggurats, reaching for the heavens, their steps disappearing into the clouds. The mighty Euphrates River flowed right through its center, the lifeblood of this sprawling urban marvel. Babylon was the center of the world, a testament to human ingenuity and power. But within this grand city, a more personal, more romantic story was said to have unfolded. The legend, passed down through the ages, tells us of a king's love for his queen. Nebuchadnezzar's wife, Ametis, came from the green, mountainous land of Media. In the flat, sun-baked landscape of Mesopotamia, she grew homesick, yearning for the lush hills and valleys of her childhood. To ease her sorrow, the king embarked on an unprecedented project. He decided to build her a mountain, an artificial paradise in the middle of the desert. Soft, dreamlike animation begins, showing a barren landscape transforming into lush, tiered gardens. This was the birth of the Hanging Gardens, not hanging like they were suspended by ropes, but overhanging a series of terraced balconies, rising one on top of another like a green zig. Imagine walking through it. Stone tiers overflowing with exotic flowers, fragrant herbs, and towering palm trees providing cool shade from the harsh sun. The sound of water would be everywhere, a constant, gentle music. Waterfalls cascading down the levels, feeding streams that wound through the foliage, all powered by a hidden, ingenious irrigation system. It was a marvel of engineering, a living sculpture of stone and water. Moretantat was a love letter from a king to his queen, carved into the very desert itself, a breathtaking fantasy made real. The visuals shift to show ancient scrolls, stone tablets, and busts of Greek historians. A beautiful story, isn't it? But here's where our journey into mystery truly begins. The most detailed and vivid descriptions of the Hanging Gardens come from the Babylonians, who supposedly built and lived with them. They come from Greek and Roman writers like Strabo, Diodorus, Siculus, and Philo of Byzantium. The problem: these men wrote their accounts hundreds of years after the gardens were said to have flourished. They were describing a legend, a story passed down through generations, not something they had seen with their own eyes. They describe incredible details: high vaulted terraces built on stone columns, staircases leading to the highest levels, and an advanced irrigation system using a chain pump or Archimedes' scroodle lift. Water from the Euphrates River all the way to the top. It sounds so plausible, so detailed. Yet, it's all secondhand information. And this leads us to the most baffling part of the puzzle. Despite the Babylonians being meticulous, documenting everything from grain harvests to royal decrees on countless clay tablets, there is not a single Babylonian text that ever mentions the Hanging Gardens. Not one. No inscriptions on stone celebrating this monumental achievement. No administrative records detailing its construction or maintenance. The city's greatest wonder is completely absent from its own history. This silence is deafening. It forces us to ask the big questions that have echoed through to millennia. Were the Hanging Gardens even real? If they were, why did the Babylonians never write about them? Was the story a later invention? A romantic embellishment by Greek writers fascinated with the exotic East? Or ... Is it possible we've been looking in the wrong place all along? As we peel back the layers of time on this journey, we'll explore shifting theories, uncover clues from lost empires, and examine ancient texts that might just hold the key to this enduring enigma. The search for the Hanging Gardens is more than just a historical quest. It is a detective story that spans empires and challenges what we think we know about the ancient world. The clues are scattered. The evidence is elusive. But the truth might be stranger and more incredible than the legend itself. Ever since humanity learned to build, we've been fascinated by structures that push the limits of what's possible. The ancient Greeks were no different. Around the 2nd century BCE, they began to compile lists of the most incredible feats of engineering and architecture. They knew structures so magnificent, they called them the 7 wonders of the world. Among these legendary creations like the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Lighthouse of Alexandria was a place so enchanting, so seemingly impossible, that it has danced between history and myth for millennia. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. But what were these gardens? And more importantly, did they even exist? Today, we're diving deep into one of history's greatest architectural mysteries. To understand the legend of the gardens, we first have to journey back in time to the city that supposedly housed them. Babylon, located near the modern-day city of Hilla in Iraq. Babylon was the glittering heart of a powerful empire. At its absolute peak in the 6th century BCE, under the rule of the formidable King Nebuchadnezzar II, it was a city of unparalleled wealth, ambition, and architectural marvels. Imagine walking through its streets. You'd be dwarfed by the legendary Ishtar Gate, a colossal entrance adorned with vibrant blue glazed bricks and depictions of powerful dragons and bulls. The city was encircled by massive double walls, rumored to be so wide that chariots could race along their tops. Towering segudas or temple towers pierced the heavens, monuments to the gods and the king's power. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a statement. It declared to the world that this was the center of civilization, and it is within this grand, powerful city that the story of our wonder begins. The legend, as it has been passed down through the ages, is a story of love. It's said that King Nebuchadnezzar II built the Hanging Gardens for his beloved wife, Queen Amytis of Media. Amytis, hailing from a land of green, rolling hills and lush mountains, found the flat, sun-baked landscape of Mesopotamia desolate and depressing. She was homesick. To ease her sorrow and bring a piece of her homeland to her, the king commanded the creation of an artificial mountain of greenery in the heart of his desert kingdom, a paradise built from stone and soil. The accounts describe a breathtaking structure, rising in a series of tiered terraces, like a man-made ziggurat covered in life. Imagine lush exotic plants and flowers from across the known world, spilling over the edges of each level. Tall palm trees provided shade from the harsh sun, their fronds rustling in the breeze. The air would have been filled with the sweet scent of blossoms and the gentle sound of waterfalls. This wasn't just a garden. It was an oasis of life, cooled by water that was ingeniously lifted from the nearby Euphrates River and channeled through a hidden, complex system of aqueducts and pumps, a miracle of engineering, a fantasy in stone and water, and perhaps the most elaborate love letter ever written. But here's where the story takes a sharp turn, and the solid ground of history begins to shift into the mists of mystery. The most detailed and famous descriptions of the Hanging Gardens don't come from the Babylonians themselves. They weren't written on clay tablets or carved into stone steles by the people who supposedly built and lived among them. Instead, they come from Greek and Roman writers like the geographer Strabo and the historian Diodorus. These writers, living hundreds of years after the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II, painted vivid pictures of the gardens. They described the high, vaulted terraces built on stone columns, the staircases leading up through the tiers, and the incredible screw pumps or chain pumps used to lift water to the very top. Their descriptions are precise and filled with awe, but there's a major problem. They were reporting on something they had never seen, based on stories that had been passed down for centuries. It was, essentially, historical hearsay. And this leads us to the most perplexing part of the entire mystery. The silence from Babylon. Archaeologists have unearthed hundreds of thousands of cuneiform tablets from ancient Mesopotamia. These tablets record everything imaginable: king lists, economic transactions, astronomical observations, epic poems, and even personal letters. King Nebuchadnezzar II, in particular, was a prolific builder, and he loved to brag about his accomplishments. His inscriptions detail the restoration of temples, the construction of the city walls, and the building of his magnificent palace. And yet, in all of these extensive records, there's not a single, solitary mention of the Hanging Gardens. Not one tablet, not one inscription on a palace wall. Nothing. The Babylonians, who documented so much of their world, are completely silent on what was supposedly one of its greatest wonders. How could they have missed it? It's like writing a history of Paris and forgetting to mention the Eiffel Tower. This deafening silence from the Babylonians themselves is the central reason why many historians and archaeologists today are skeptical that the gardens ever existed in Babylon at all. So, if there's no Babylonian evidence, could the Greek writers have just made it all up? Perhaps not. Maybe they weren't fabricating a story, but were simply mistaken about the location. This is where a fascinating and compelling alternative theory comes into play, proposed by Dr. Stephanie Dalley of Oxford University. Dr. Dalley has spent decades studying ancient texts and has put forward the idea that the Hanging Gardens were real, but they weren't in Babylon. She argues they were located some 300 miles to the north, in the city of Nineveh, the capital of the rival Assyrian Empire. And who built them? Not Nebuchadnezzar, but the Assyrian king Sennacherib, about a century earlier. Why the confusion? Well, the Assyrians conquered Babylon, and Sennacherib was so proud of his capital, Nineveh, that he even referred to it as the New Babylon. It's plausible that over time, the name of the city got confused, and the magnificent gardens of Nineveh became attributed to the more famous city of Babylon. What makes this theory so compelling is the evidence. Unlike in Babylon, we have concrete proof from Nineveh. Sennacherib, much like Nebuchadnezzar, left behind detailed inscriptions, boasting of his achievements, and in these inscriptions, he describes an incredible palace, a palace without rival, and next to it, a wondrous garden that he engineered. He speaks of creating a man-made mountain and planting it with all kinds of aromatic plants and fruit trees. He also describes the incredible engineering feat he accomplished to water it. A massive system of canals, dams, and aqueducts, stretching over 50 miles, that brought water from the distant mountains. Parts of this immense aqueduct system can still be seen in the Iraqi landscape today. Reliefs carved on the walls of Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh even depict a lush, terraced garden, irrigated by water from an aqueduct. The images align remarkably well with the later Greek descriptions of the Hanging Gardens. It's a tantalizing match: textual evidence, archaeological evidence, and pictorial evidence, all pointing to... So, where does that leave us? The mystery of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon is a perfect example of how history is not always a set of clear facts, but often a puzzle with missing pieces. We are left with three possibilities. 1. The Hanging Gardens existed exactly as the legend tells you, a magnificent gift from King Nebuchadnezzar to his queen in Babylon. We just haven't found the evidence yet. Perhaps it was destroyed so completely that no trace remains, and the records of its existence have been lost to time. 2. The gardens are a complete myth, a beautiful, romantic story that grew out of the awe and wonder that the Greeks felt for the magnificent, distant culture of Mesopotamia, an embellishment, a legend that took on a life of its own. Or 3, and perhaps the most likely scenario, the story is true, but the location is wrong. The legendary Hanging Gardens were actually the gardens of Sennacherib in Nineveh, and through the telephone game of history, their location was transferred to the more famous, almost mythical city of Babylon. Ultimately, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon may not be a single place, but a powerful idea. They represent humanity's desire to create beauty in desolate places, our ability to engineer the impossible, and the enduring power of a good story. Whether they were a real structure in Babylon, a marvel in Nineveh, or a dream in the minds of ancient writers. Their legend has cultivated our imagination for thousands of years, and that, in itself, is a kind of wonder. What do you think? Were the gardens real? Let me know your theory in the comments below. Picture this: a lush, green mountain of terraces rising from the heart of a dusty desert city, filled with exotic trees, fragrant flowers, and cascading waterfalls. A true paradise on earth, built by a king for his homesick queen. It's a beautiful story, one that has captivated us for centuries. But here's where the mystery begins. What if I told you that this breathtaking wonder might never have existed at all? The earliest known descriptions of the Hanging Gardens don't come from Babylonian records. They come from Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, writing hundreds of years after the gardens were supposedly built. They describe magnificent, high terraces, grand staircases, and an advanced irrigation system that pumped water to the very top, a marvel of engineering. But they offer no first-hand evidence. It was all based on stories passed down through generations. Now, you'd expect a project of this scale to be a source of immense pride for the Babylonians, right? They were meticulous record keepers. We have countless clay tablets detailing everything from crop yields to astronomical observations, royal decrees to legal contracts. They even recorded the massive construction projects of their kings, like the city walls and the Great Zig. Strangely, no Babylonian text ever mentions the gardens. Not a single tablet, not one stone inscription. It has a complete and total silence from the very people who supposedly built and lived among them. It's as if the most famous structure in their capital city was invisible to them. And so the question echoes across time. Were the Hanging Gardens real? A phantom of the ancient imagination, or a tangible marvel lost to history? If they were real, where exactly were they built? Who built them? And why does the physical evidence remain so elusive? As we begin our journey, we will peel back the layers of time, digging through ancient ruins and deciphering cryptic texts. We'll explore shifting theories and uncover clues that may hold the key to one of the greatest historical enigmas ever told. Get ready, because the story is far more complex and fascinating than you can imagine. To understand the creation of a wonder, we must first meet the man credited with its creation, the man who had the power to build it. His name echoed through empires, feared by some and revered by others. Nebuchadnezzar II. Was he a ruthless conqueror, expanding his empire with an iron fist, a visionary architect who transformed his capital into the jewel of the ancient world, or a devoted husband, driven by love to build an impossible garden for his queen? Perhaps the answer is all of the above. Nebuchadnezzar II rose to power in 605 BC, inheriting the throne of the Neo-Babylonian Empire from his father, Nabab. His reign, lasting over 40 years, would become the undisputed golden age of Babylon. This wasn't a peaceful inheritance. It was an empire forged in fire. He expanded its borders through relentless military conquest, decisively defeating the Egyptians at the Battle of Carchemish, besieging the city of Jerusalem, and cementing Babylon's absolute dominance over the ancient Near East. His military genius was undeniable, but Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a warrior king. He was a master builder, an urban planner with a vision on an epic scale. Under his command, Babylon transformed from a major city into the largest, most magnificent metropolis the world had ever seen. He ordered the construction of the famous Ishtar Gate, a breathtaking structure adorned with deep blue glazed bricks and reliefs of lions, dragons, and bulls. He built massive defensive walls so thick that chariots could race upon their tops. He raised a towering ziggurat, which some believe was the inspiration for the biblical Tower of Babel. The city became a testament to his power and piety, a beacon of civilization. His inscriptions boast of his achievements. I made Babylon the center of the land, and I made the city of Babylon preeminent among all countries and for all time. He poured immense wealth and resources into his capital, not just for defense, but to create a city worthy of the gods, especially Marduk, the patron deity of Babylon. So, we have a king with the ambition, the resources, and the engineering prowess to undertake almost any project imaginable, building a terraced garden while challenging would certainly have been within his capabilities. The question isn't asterisk could asterisk he have built it, but asterisk did asterisk he? And if so, why? This brings us back to the romantic tale. Legend says, Nebuchadnezzar married Amytis of Media, a princess from a mountainous Greenland. To ease her homesickness for the verdant hills of her homeland, he built her the Hanging Gardens, a man-made mountain in the flat plains of Mesopotamia. It's a powerful and romantic motive. But just like the gardens themselves, concrete evidence for Queen Amytis is scarce. Is she a historical figure, or a later invention to explain the garden's existence? Herein lies the core of our investigation. We have a powerful king, a magnificent city, and a legendary garden with no clear paper trail. This leads us to a fascinating and controversial alternative theory. What if the Hanging Gardens of Babylon weren't in Babylon at all? Some scholars, most notably Dr. Stephanie Dali of Oxford University, have proposed a radical idea. They argue that the Hanging Gardens were real, but they were located hundreds of miles to the north in the city of Nineveh, and they weren't built by Nebuchadnezzar, but by his arch-rivals, the Assyrians, under their king Sennacherib, full century earlier. How is this possible? The evidence lies in a careful re-examination of ancient texts. Assyrian records from Sennacherib's reign describe, in great detail, a spectacular palace and an astonishing garden he built at Nineveh. He boasted of creating a palace without rival and a wonder for all peoples. He describes intricate water-raising technologies, like a new form of bronze water screw, to irrigate a high terraced garden. His descriptions match those of the later Greek writers far more closely than anything found in Babylon. Furthermore, archaeological evidence at Nineveh reveals the remnants of a vast system of canals, aqueducts, and waterworks, an engineering feat that could have supported just such a garden. Reliefs found in Sennacherib's palace even depict a lush, terraced garden watered by an aqueduct. The pieces seem to fit. So why were they called the Hanging Gardens of Babylon? The theory suggests that after Babylon conquered Assyria, Nineveh was destroyed. Over time, as Babylon became the dominant city in the world's imagination, the fame of Nineveh's great garden may have been transferred, in story and legend, to its more famous successor. Babylon might have become a kind of shorthand for Mesopotamian grandeur. This theory challenges everything we thought we knew, pitting the silent records of Babylon against the detailed inscriptions of Nineveh. It's a clash of empires, a case of stolen legacy that has lasted for millennia. Are we looking in the wrong place, for the wrong king, in the wrong city? The evidence is tantalizing, but far from conclusive. The mystery deepens. Whether in Babylon or Nineveh, built by Nebuchadnezzar or Sennacherib, the legend of the Hanging Gardens speaks to a fundamental human desire: to create beauty in the harshest of environments, to engineer paradise, and to build something that lasts forever. It's a story of ambition, love, and the enduring power of a good story to outlive even the empires that created it. The definitive answer remains buried, perhaps forever, under the sands of Iraq. But the search continues. Archaeologists keep digging, historians keep deciphering, and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon continue to hang, suspended between myth and reality, inspiring wonder and debate to this day. What do you think? Were they a real wonder lost to time, or one of history's greatest legends? Let me know in the comments below. In part 2, we will go deeper into the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II. We'll explore his complex legacy, from the conquest of Jerusalem to the psychological torment that may have plagued his final years a ruler who turned Babylon into a global superpower, and whose architectural ambitions may have shaped history forever. To understand one of history's greatest wonders, we must first meet the man who had the power to build it. His name echoed through empires. Fered Baisome, revered by others, Nebuchadnezzar II. Was he a ruthless conqueror, a visionary architect, a husband driven by love, or all of the above? Let's uncover the story of the king who built an empire of brick and legend. Nebuchadnezzar II rose to power in 605 BCE, inheriting the throne of the vast Neo-Babylonian empire from his father, His reign, which would last for over 4 decades, marked the absolute pinnacle of Babylon's glory, its golden age. From the very beginning, he proved himself a formidable leader. He expanded the empire's borders through relentless military campaigns, most famously defeating the powerful Egyptians and their allies at the Battle of Karnak. This single victory cemented Babylon's dominance over the entire ancient Near East. He didn't stop there. His armies marched across the Levant, besieging the city of Jerusalem, an event that would change the course of history for its people. But Nebuchadnezzar wasn't just a warrior king defined by conquest. He was, perhaps even more so, a builder, a master architect with a vision that dwarfed all others. Under his command, the city of Babylon transformed into the greatest metropolis on earth. Imagine walking through its streets 2,500 years ago. It would have been a dazzling spectacle of monumental architecture. Wide, sacred processional ways paved with stone, and stunning religious monuments reaching for the heavens. He was a man obsessed with honoring the gods and showcasing his power. He ordered the reconstruction and expansion of the temple complex dedicated to Marduk, Babylon's chief deity. He built massive city walls, so thick and tall that they were said to be impenetrable, a statement of both security and grandeur. And of course there was the famed Ishtar Gate. This wasn't just an entrance. It was a masterpiece of glazed brick, shimmering in vibrant blues, and decorated with hundreds of reliefs of lions, dragons, and bullsmythic beasts guarding the heart of his empire. Even today, the reconstructed Ishtar Gate in Berlin gives us a glimpse of its breathtaking beauty. Yet, according to legend, Nebuchadnezzar's most beautiful and astonishing creation wasn't a temple or a fortress. It was a garden, a declaration of love for his queen, Amytis of Media. The story goes that Amytis, who came from the green, mountainous lands of what is now Iran, was deeply homesick in the flat, sun-baked plains of Mesopotamia. She longed for the lush hills and cool air of her childhood home to ease her melancholy. The king, in a grand gesture of affection, is said to have commanded his engineers to achieve the impossible. He ordered them to build an artificial mountain, a multi-tiered zigguratic structure covered in a profusion of trees, fragrant flowers, and cascading vines. It was said to be a paradise on earth, irrigated by a marvel of ancient engineering and advanced water-lifting system, perhaps using a chain pump or an Archimedes screw that brought water from the Euphrates River all the way to the top terraces, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. If true, it was a display of love and power, unlike any other in history, earning its place as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. So, the big question remains: did Nebuchadnezzar actually build the Hanging Gardens? The truth is, it's incredibly complicated, and this is where history becomes a detective story. Archaeologists have unearthed thousands of Babylonian cuneiform tablets from his reign. These are detailed government records, chronicles of construction projects, and royal inscriptions. They mention his palaces, the temples, the city walls, even the streets in meticulous detail. But in all of this vast library of text, there is one conspicuous omission. There is not a single contemporary Babylonian mention of any hanging gardens. Why would such a monumental, world-renowned achievement go unrecorded by the very people who supposedly built it? It's a baffling mystery. Was it a state secret? A private sanctuary for the queen so personal that it was kept out of public record? That seems unlikely for a king who loved to boast about his accomplishments. Was it just a romantic legend? A beautiful story that grew and embellished over time, told by later Greek and Roman writers who may have misheard or exaggerated the tales. They were told, or perhaps the most intriguing theory of all, were the Hanging Gardens never in Babylon at all? Some scholars now argue that the gardens were actually built hundreds of miles to the north, in the city of Nineveh, by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. A century earlier, the descriptions of Sennacherib's palace gardens match the later accounts of the Hanging Gardens remarkably well, including the sophisticated irrigation technology. Is it possible that the legend became muddled, and the glory of Nineveh's gardens was mistakenly attributed to Babylon's most famous king, Nebuchadnezzar? The debate still rages among historians today. Regardless of the gardens, Nebuchadnezzar's influence stretches far beyond architecture and into the pages of scripture itself. He is a central and formidable figure in the Hebrew Bible, particularly in the book of Daniel. He is forever remembered for the destruction of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem and the subsequent Babylonian exile. where the Jewish people were forcibly relocated to Babylon. This period of captivity had a profound and lasting impact on Jewish identity and religion. To some, he was an instrument of divine wrath, a tyrant who laid waste to their holy city. To others, especially in the context of his own empire, he was a visionary king who established order, fostered incredible cultural and scientific advancements, and literally reshaped the world around him. His real personality, his inner thoughts and motivations, remain hidden behind the millions of bricks that built his monuments and the ancient, fragmented lines of texts left behind. But what is absolutely certain is that few rulers in all of history have shaped their world so completely and left behind a legacy so enduring, so mysterious, and so utterly magnificent. The legend of Nebuchadnezzar II, like the city he built, continues to captivate and inspire us, a testament to the power of human ambition, love, and the eternal quest to build a paradise on earth. A man-made mountain of green in the middle of the desert, built by a king for his homesick queen. It's a beautiful story, one of the most romantic tales from antiquity. But what if I told you it might all be a lie? Today, we're diving deep into one of history's greatest mysteries. We'll journey back to ancient Mesopotamia, to the heart of a powerful empire, and uncover the truth behind the legend. Did the Hanging Gardens ever really exist? And if so, where are they? The answer will take us from the dusty plains of modern-day Iraq to the pages of ancient Greek texts. And it's far more surprising than you might think. Stick around, because we're about to solve a 2,000-year-old puzzle. To understand the gardens, we first have to understand Babylon. Imagine a city standing near what is now Hilla in Iraq. This isn't just any city. In the 6th century BCE, under the rule of King Nebuchadnezzar II, Babylon was the center of the world. It was a metropolis of staggering power, immense wealth, and jaw-dropping architectural ambition. This was the home of the legendary Ishtar Gate, a marvel of deep blue glazed brick adorned with golden dragons and bulls. It was a city protected by towering walls, so wide, it was said that 2 chariots could race side by side on top of them. Its temples, known as ziggurats, were monumental structures that seemed to pierce the very heavens. In this city of wonders, anything seemed possible. So, where does the story of the Hanging Gardens come from? According to ancient sources, the tale begins with a love story. King Nebuchadnezzar had a wife, Queen Amidus, who came from the mountainous land of Media, a stark contrast to the flat, arid landscape of Babylon. She longed for the green hills and lush valleys of her homeland to ease her homesickness and win her heart. The king commanded the creation of an artificial paradise, an oasis in the city. The Hanging Gardens were said to rise in a series of magnificent tiers, like a man-made mountain. Each level was lush with exotic plants, vibrant flowers, and shaded by graceful palm trees. Waterfalls cascaded down the terraces, fed by a complex and hidden system of aqueducts, a true miracle of irrigation and engineering. It was a fantasy built of stone and water, a love letter carved into the desert landscape, a breathtaking spectacle designed to prove that in Babylon, even nature itself could be commanded by the king. It's an incredible image, isn't it? But here's where the mystery really begins. The earliest and most detailed descriptions of the Hanging Gardens don't come from Babylonian records. In fact, they come from Greek and Roman historians like Strabo, Diodorus, and Quintus Curtius Rufus, who were all writing centuries after the gardens were supposedly built and had withered away. They never saw the gardens themselves. Their accounts are based on even earlier texts, which are now lost to us. They describe these high, ascending terraces, elaborate staircases, and a sophisticated irrigation system that supposedly lifted water from the Euphrates River to the very top, a truly astonishing feat for its time. But they were all outsiders, looking back at a faded empire. They offer no first-hand evidence, only stories passed down through generations. And that brings us to the biggest problem. The elephant in the room, or rather, the garden that isn't. Despite extensive archaeological work in the ruins of Babylon, we have found thousands of cuneiform texts from Nebuchadnezzar's reign. These clay tablets are like the city's official records. They're incredibly detailed, listing construction projects, city planning documents, and administrative decrees. They mention the grand palaces, the mighty temples, the fortified walls, and the iconic gates. Everything Nebuchadnezzar built to glorify his city and his name is recorded. Everything, that is, except for one glaring omission. There is no mention of the Hanging Gardens, not a single tablet, not one stone inscription, not even a whisper. So, did Nebuchadnezzar actually build the Hanging Gardens? The truth is, it's complicated. Why would such a monumental achievement, one of the 7 wonders of the world, go completely unrecorded by the very people who built it? They were meticulous record keepers. Was it some kind of top state secret? That seems unlikely for a king who loved to boast about his accomplishments. Was it just a romantic legend that grew over time? A piece of historical fiction created by Greek writers fascinated with the exotic East? Was it never built in Babylon at all? This silence from the Babylonian records is deafening, and it has led archaeologists and historians to explore some truly radical theories. Perhaps the story is true, but we've been looking in the wrong place, or for the wrong king. This is where the story takes a fascinating turn. Dr. Stephanie Daly, an Oxford University scholar, proposed a groundbreaking theory. What if the Hanging Gardens did exist, but they weren't in Babylon? She argues that the gardens were actually built 300 miles north in the city of Nineveh, the capital of the rival Assyrian Empire, and the king who built them wasn't Nebuchadnezzar, but the Assyrian king, Sennacherib. Full century earlier, Daly's evidence is compelling. Unlike Babylon, we have found extensive Assyrian texts and palace reliefs from Nineveh that vividly describe magnificent royal gardens. Sennacherib himself boasted about constructing a palace without rival and a wonder for all peoples. He wrote about creating a man-made landscape with terraces, planting a vast array of trees and exotic plants from across his empire. And most importantly, he described using a revolutionary new technology to raise water. The Archimedes screw long before Archimedes was even born. These descriptions from Nineveh match the Greek accounts of the Hanging Gardens far better than anything found in Babylon. So how did this massive mix-up happen? It could be a simple case of historical confusion. After the Assyrians conquered Babylon, Ter Capita, Nineveh was sometimes referred to as New Babylon. It's possible that Greek soldiers who saw the gardens in Nineveh, and later Greek historians who recorded their stories, simply conflated the two great Mesopotamian cities. The legend of the powerful Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar, was more famous. So over time, the story of the gardens became attached to him and his more renowned city. It has a compelling idea that solves the mystery of the missing evidence in Babylon while validating the ancient descriptions. The legendary Hanging Gardens may have been real, just lost in translation and misplaced by history, whether he built the gardens or not. Nebuchadnezzar's influence on history is undeniable, and it goes far beyond architecture. He is a prominent and complex figure in the Hebrew Bible, remembered for his military campaigns, most notably the destruction of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem and the subsequent exile of the Jewish people to Babylon. This event, known as the Babylonian captivity, was a defining moment in Jewish history, and it cemented Nebuchadnezzar's reputation as a powerful, sometimes ruthless, conqueror. To some, he was a tyrant, an instrument of divine punishment. To others, he was a visionary king, a brilliant strategist who redefined the very concept of empire and brought a new level of order and administration to the ancient world. The real man remains hidden behind the layers of history, behind the crumbling brickwork of his monuments and the ancient lines of scripture and cuneiform tablets. Was he a romantic who built a paradise for his love? A tyrant who enslaved nations? Or a master builder whose greatest achievement was stolen by another king and another city? What is certain is that few rulers in history shaped their world so completely and left behind a legacy so rich with mystery and debate. The story of the Hanging Gardens is not just about a garden. It's about the nature of history itself. It shows us how stories are told, how legends are born, and how even the most solid-seeming facts can dissolve like a mirage in the desert sand. Whether a Babylonian marvel or an Assyrian masterpiece, the garden represents a universal human dream: to create beauty in a harsh world, to make the impossible possible. and to build something that lasts forever. Of all the great monuments of the ancient world, only one survives. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands tall, defiant against time, but one of its legendary companions might never have stood at all. Or did it? This is the story of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the most mysterious of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A marvel described with awe, yet whose existence remains unproven, and whose beauty continues to enchant scholars, dreamers, and explorers alike. The ancient Greeks were captivated by human achievement. Around the 2nd century BCE, writers began compiling lists of the greatest feats ever created, structures so impressive they were considered wonders. They called them the 7 wonders of the world, and included in this list was a place so magical, so seemingly impossible, that it seemed more myth than reality. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. To understand the gardens, we must first understand Babylon. This ancient city, located near present-day Hilla, Iraq, was the epicenter of power and culture in Mesopotamia. At its peak under King Nebuchadnezzar II in the 6th century BCE, Babylon was a city of incredible wealth and architectural ambition. It was home to the legendary Ishtar Gate, with its brilliant blue glazed bricks and towering walls said to be wide enough for chariots to race atop them. Temples, like the great Ziggurat at Menanke, seemed to touch the sky. It was in this glittering metropolis that a green paradise was said to rise from the heart of the desert. But here's where the mystery begins. The earliest known descriptions of the Hanging Gardens don't come from Babylonian records. They come from Greek historians like Strabo and Diodorus Siculus, writing hundreds of years after the gardens were supposedly built. They described magnificent, tiered terraces, brimming with exotic trees and plants, elaborate staircases, and an advanced irrigation system that pumped water up from the Euphrates River to nourish this man-made mountain of green. But they offer no first-hand evidence. Strangely, no Babylonian text ever mentions the gardens. Not a single clay tablet, not a single stone inscription. For a civilization that meticulously documented everything from grain harvests to royal decrees, this silence is deafening. How could such a monumental achievement, a symbol of a king's power and devotion, be completely overlooked in its own records? This glaring omission has led many historians to a startling conclusion. Perhaps the Hanging Gardens of Babylon never existed in Babylon at all. So, where did the legend come from? One popular theory attributes the gardens to a king's love story. The tale goes that King Nebuchadnezzar II built the gardens for his wife, Queen Amat. She came from the lush, mountainous land of Media and was homesick for the green hills and valleys of her youth. To soothe her longing, the king commanded the creation of a terraced, artificial mountain planted with the trees and flowers she missed so dearly. It's a beautiful, romantic story, a king moving heaven and earth, quite literally, for his queen. But is it true? While Nebuchadnezzar was a real and powerful king, there is no historical record of a Queen Amat. Was she a real person whose memory was lost to time, or simply a character invented later to add a touch of romance to the legend? Another compelling theory, proposed by Dr. Stephanie Daly of Oxford University, suggests the gardens were real, but they weren't in Babylon. She argues that the legend of the Babylonian gardens is a case of mistaken identity. After decades of deciphering ancient texts, she believes the gardens were actually built hundreds of miles to the north, in the city of Nineveh, by the Assyrian king. Assyrian records describe an astonishing palace, a palace without rival, and a garden that was a wonder for all peoples. They have in detail the advanced technology used to raise water, including a device resembling an Archimedes screw, long before it was thought to be invented. The descriptions from Nineveh match the Greek accounts of the Babylonian gardens far more closely than anything found in Babylon itself. Could it be that the Greeks, who conquered the region centuries later, simply confused the grand capital of Assyria with the more famous capital of Babylonia? Let's imagine what it would have been like to see these gardens, whether in Babylon or Nineveh. Picture yourself walking through the dusty, sun-baked streets of an ancient Mesopotamian city. You turn a corner, and there it is. A cascading green mountain rising from the flat landscape, a vibrant oasis of life. The air is cool and fragrant with the scent of blossoms and damp earth. You hear the gentle sound of waterfalls and streams trickling down from one terrace to the next. Towering palms, weeping willows, and fruit trees provide shade from the harsh sun. It would have been an engineering marvel, a testament to human ingenuity and a defiance of nature itself. The sheer logistics of building and maintaining such a structure would have been staggering. Engineers would have had to construct a series of massive, waterproofed terraces, possibly using layers of reeds, bitumen, and lead to prevent water from seeping through and eroding the structure. Then came the monumental task of irrigation. How did they get water to the very top? The most likely method involved a chain pump, a continuous loop of buckets that would have been powered by slaves or animals, constantly lifting water from the river or a well below. This system would have required constant maintenance and a huge amount of labor to keep the garden alive in the arid climate. The Hanging Gardens were not just a beautiful sight. They were a complex, living machine. So, what is the verdict? A romantic gift from a Babylonian king, a misplaced marvel from an Assyrian rival, or a beautiful fiction? An idealized vision of the East created by Greek writers. The truth is, we still don't know for sure. The site of ancient Babylon has been excavated, but no conclusive archaeological evidence of the gardens has ever been found. The legacy of the Hanging Gardens endures not in stone and soil, but in our collective imagination. It represents a longing for paradise, a testament to the power of love and ambition, and an enduring puzzle that continues to challenge our understanding of the ancient world. The mystery of the Hanging Gardens reminds us that history is not just a collection of facts, but a tapestry of stories, some of which may be more legend than reality. But their power to inspire and captivate remains undiminished. Perhaps some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be wondered at forever. Of all the great monuments of the ancient world, only one survives. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands tall, defiant against time. But one of its legendary companions, it may never have stood at all. Or did it? This is the story of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, most mysterious of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. A marvel described with awe, yet whose existence remains unproven, and whose beauty continues to enchant scholars, dreamers, and explorers just like us. In this 14-part series, we're diving deep into the legend, the history, the incredible engineering, and the ongoing mystery of a green paradise said to rise from the very heart of the desert. Welcome to our journey to unlock the secrets of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. To understand the gardens, we must first understand Babylon itself. Imagine an ancient city standing near the present-day city of Hilla in modern-day Iraq. This wasn't just any city. At its peak, under King Nebuchadnezzar, the second in the 6th century BCE, Babylon was a global superpower, a hub of incredible power, immense wealth, and breathtaking architectural ambition. Think of it as the New York or Tokyo of its time. It was home to the legendary Ishtar Gate, a dazzling blue-bricked entrance adorned with depictions of dragons and bulls. The city was protected by towering walls, so immense that ancient writers claimed chariots could race side by side on top of them. Its temples, great ziggurats, were said to touch the sky. Babylon wasn't just a city, it was a statement. It was a declaration of dominance, artistry, and a connection to the divine. And at the heart of this magnificent city, according to legend, was its green jewel, the Hanging Gardens. So, where did this idea of wonders of the world even come from? It all started with the ancient Greeks. They were utterly captivated by human achievement. Around the 2nd century BCE, Greek writers and poets began compiling lists of the greatest, most awe-inspiring feats of architecture and engineering ever created. These weren't just impressive buildings. They were structures so monumental, so seemingly impossible, that they were considered themata sights to be seen, or wonders. They called them the 7 wonders of the world. This legendary list included the Great Pyramid, the Lighthouse of Alexandria, the Colossus of Rhodes, and among them, a place so magical, so lush, that it seemed more like a myth than reality. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. It was described as a man-made mountain of trees, flowers, and waterfalls, rising tier upon tier into the sky. a green oasis in the middle of a sun-baked landscape. The question that has puzzled historians for centuries is, was it real? The descriptions that have survived paint an incredible picture. Ancient writers like Strabo and Diodorus, who lived centuries after the gardens were said to have been built, wrote of them with wonder. They described stone terraces built like a theater, one on top of the other. Each terrace was filled with soil, deep enough for the largest trees to take root. They spoke of exotic plants, fragrant flowers, and fruit trees from across the empire, creating a vibrant, multi-level paradise. Imagine walking through the dusty, bustling streets of Babylon and then looking up to see this mountain of green, cascading with water and life. The contrast would have been staggering. It was said to have been built for a homesick queen, a gift of love from a powerful king. But who was this king? The man most often credited with this incredible feat is Nebuchadnezzar II. To truly grasp the legend of the gardens, we need to understand the man behind it. Nebuchadnezzar II wasn't just a king. He was an empire. During his 43-year reign, he transformed Babylon from a regional power into the dominant force of the Near East. He was a brilliant military strategist, conquering vast territories, including Judah, which led to the Babylonian exile of the Jewish people, but he was also a master builder. Under his rule, Babylon underwent a massive construction boom. He didn't just repair the city, he reinvented it. He built grand palaces, fortified the walls, and constructed magnificent temples dedicated to the patron god, Marduk. His inscriptions boast of his building projects, declaring how he made Babylon a fortress and a marvel for all humankind to behold. His architectural ambitions knew no bounds. So, if anyone had the resources, the power, and the sheer audacity to build a man-made mountain of gardens in the desert, it was him. But here's the mystery. In all of his own extensive inscriptions, Nebuchadnezzar never once mentions the Hanging Gardens. Not a single word. This silence is the core of the mystery. Why would a king who meticulously documented his every architectural achievement fail to mention his most wondrous creation? This has led many scholars to question if the gardens ever existed in Babylon at all. Some have proposed alternative theories. One fascinating idea, put forward by Dr. Stefani Dali of Oxford University, is that the gardens were real, but they weren't in Babylon. She argues that they were actually located in the rival city of Nineveh, built by the Assyrian king Sennacherib, about 300 miles to the north. Sennacherib's inscriptions describe a magnificent palace in a wonder for all peoples, a garden that recreated a mountain landscape, complete with an ingenious system of water screws, or Archimedes screws, to raise water from the river. This description matches the later Greek accounts of the Hanging Gardens far better than anything found in Babylon. Could the Greeks have simply confused Nineveh with the more famous city of Babylon? It's a compelling theory that changes everything we thought we knew. Let's talk about the engineering. Whether in Babylon or Nineveh, building the Hanging Gardens would have been one of the greatest engineering challenges of the ancient world. The fundamental problem is water. How do you get thousands of gallons of water every single day to the top of a multi-story structure in a hot, arid climate? The answer likely lies in a combination of technologies. One method could have been a chain pump, a system of buckets on a continuous loop, powered by humans or animals, to lift water from a source like the Euphrates River. Another possibility is the water screw, or Archimedes screw, which we mentioned earlier. This device, a large screw inside a cylinder, could efficiently move water upwards as it was turned. Then, there was the challenge of waterproofing. The terraces would need to be sealed with layers of bitumen, anatarau, tar and lead, to prevent water from leaking through and damaging the structure below. It was a complex, labor-intensive system that required constant maintenance. Building the gardens was one thing, keeping them alive was another. So, where do we stand today? Despite centuries of searching, archaeologists have found no conclusive evidence of the gardens at the site of ancient Babylon. Excavations have revealed the foundations of Nebuchadnezzar's palace and the city's massive walls, but no structure that definitively matches the descriptions of the Hanging Gardens. This lack of physical evidence is frustrating, but it doesn't necessarily mean the gardens are a complete myth. The Euphrates River has shifted its course over the millennia, and it is possible that the site of the gardens was eroded away long ago or still lies buried under unexplored parts of the ruins. The legend of the gardens is so persistent, so detailed, that it's hard to believe it was created from nothing. It feels like a memory, a story passed down through generations, perhaps embellished over time, but rooted in a real, breathtaking place. Whether it was a real place in Babylon, a mislocated wonder from Nineveh, or a beautiful poetic ideal, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon represent something timeless. They represent humanity's desire to create beauty in the harshest of environments, to build paradise on earth. It's a story of love, power, and ingenuity. It is a legend that captures our imagination because it speaks to our own dreams of creating something lasting and beautiful. The mystery is part of its magic. It invites us to keep searching, keep questioning, and keep dreaming of a garden that hung in the sky. Thank you so much for joining us on this part of our journey. The story is far from over. In our next episode, we'll delve deeper into the reign of Nebuchadnezzar II and the world he created. If you enjoyed this exploration, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss a single part of this incredible series. We'll see you next time as we continue to unlock the secrets of the ancient world.